I missed out on the big lottery win because I didn't buy the ticket. My biased parents planned to sell me into the mountains for a huge bride price, but on that very night, the extreme cold arrived, shattering all their plans. Due to lack of food and drink, the whole family forced me to go out in just a single layer of clothes to find food for them, but when I dragged my frozen body back, what awaited me was their meat cleaver. Anyway, you're going to die soon. It's better to die with some meaning. Your brother is starving. Cooking you will warm him up just right. When I opened my eyes, I was back to the time when everything hadn't started yet. This time, I'm going to sit by the fireplace, cuddle with my cat, and watch them die miserably with my own eyes. 01. Pain. It really hurts. The pain of being chopped on the limbs by the meat cleaver seemed to penetrate deep into the bone marrow. I opened my eyes, almost sweating profusely from the fright. I stared at the phone screen to confirm the time again and again. June 1st, 2024. Harper, don't be afraid. You've really come back. This is the third day since I was reborn, and there are still 10 days until the extreme cold will break out. My back was soaked with cold sweat. It took me a while to calm down and finally relieve the feeling of fear. Harper, what are you standing there for? Hurry up and cook. Do you want to starve your dad to death? Harper? Are you sleeping and being lazy on the couch again? What time is it already? Why haven't you gone to cook yet? I looked up. The man who was my father in a biological sense had just pushed the door open and entered. He was standing at the entrance, glaring at me and shouting. It was also him who used the meat cleaver to chop off my limbs. No matter how much I begged with tears in my eyes, he never let me go. Dad, I think Harper has gone stupid. She's been acting dazed these past few days. She was useless to begin with, and now she's even more of a waste of our family's food. The one sneering at me with folded arms beside me was Trevor, my younger brother. It was because of his casual words, "I'm so hungry, why don't we just cook Harper?" that I was hacked to death alive. However, having been reborn, I will never let myself end up in such a fate again. It's them who deserve to die. I lowered my eyes, hiding the hatred in them, and got up tremblingly. There's no food at home. I'll go buy some now. If there's no food, why don't you hurry up and go? Trevor's fat body plopped down on the couch, creating a huge dent in the couch. He complained, "It's so hot these days. Why do I have to go out?" My dad sat down beside him with a smile. "Aren't I going to buy a lottery ticket? What if we win the big prize? Our family will get rich." Trevor sneered, "You've been buying that number for 4 years. When have you ever won?" "Stop daydreaming." I lowered my head, trying to appear as timid and scared as possible, but in my heart, I couldn't stop sneering. The lottery ticket for this issue, which they were too lazy to buy, happened to be the winning number for the 10 million yuan jackpot. In my previous life, because we missed out on the big prize and my dad was reluctant to blame his precious son Trevor, he set his sights on me. Since sky-high bride prices were no longer popular in the city, they turned their attention to the mountains. A bachelor from a poor mountain valley was willing to pay a bride price of 500,000 yuan, but he wanted me to be the common wife for his 3 brothers. My dad and mom were blinded by the 500,000 yuan. When they saw that I wasn't willing, they even tied me up directly, planning to send me to the bachelor's van as soon as it got dark. By then, the van would drive straight back to the mountain valley, as long as they didn't call the police. No one would know that I had been sold. Unfortunately, things didn't go as they wished. On that very night, the extreme cold arrived. It was clearly the midsummer of July, but a sudden snowstorm hit. The snowstorm lasted for 3 whole days and nights. The global temperature also dropped from 30 degrees Celsius in a nosedive to 0 degrees, minus 20 degrees, minus 50 degrees, and even minus 70 degrees. After the extreme cold arrived, they forced me to go out and grab supplies again and again. In sub-zero weather, they were reluctant to give me a down jacket to wear. I could only go out with layers of single-layer clothes. Later, when no more supplies could be grabbed and there was no more food at home, they actually turned their target onto me. Just because Trevor wanted to eat meat, my dad could hack me to death alive. Thinking of this, hatred surged and rolled in my heart. I want revenge. I must make them taste the bitterness of hell. 02. After going out, I went straight to the lottery store. My dad had been buying the same set of numbers for a full 4 years. I had them memorized backwards and forwards. The fresh lottery ticket with the smell of ink was placed in my hand. I carefully hid it in my phone case. When I got home, Trevor was playing a game. The sound of game over echoed throughout the living room. My mom also came back from the square dancing club. At the moment, she was filming a dance video on her phone, planning to post it on Douyin. Having been married for almost 30 years, she still had a dream of becoming famous and being a star. Seeing that I was back, she affectionately said, "Harper is back, are you tired?" But her hands were still making dance moves, showing no intention of helping me at all. In the past, I didn't understand. People like her, who only talk the talk and never take any actual action to help you, are actually the most hypocritical. Plus, Every time my dad was about to beat me, she would try to persuade him from the side, so I always had illusions about my family, thinking that at least my mom loved me, but as the saying goes, true colors are revealed in times of crisis. When going out to look for supplies, it was her who pulled off the only fleece-lined vest I had and put it on herself. Mom is old and can't stand the cold, you're young, so you'll definitely be able to make it through, when I was being hacked to death by my dad. It was also her who set up the pot beside him and said, Trevor's dad, chop the meat into smaller pieces, otherwise, it won't be easy to cook thoroughly. Her current affection, in my eyes, was like a snake hissing and spitting out its forked tongue. I didn't know when it would bite hard. My silence made my mom feel strange. Harper, why aren't you talking? What's wrong with you? Trevor lost another game and took his anger out on me. Harper, is a fool to begin with. Why do you even need to ask? It's because of this unlucky thing at home that I keep losing. I silently turned around and went to the kitchen, only to find my dad smoking there. The kitchen was filled with smoke, but he didn't turn on the range hood because he was afraid of disturbing his precious son. Even when Trevor was playing games, I wasn't allowed to turn on the range hood when I was cooking. Anyway, once the kitchen door was closed, only I would be choked, not them. When my dad saw that I was back, he directly threw his cigarette butt at me. The cigarette butt, still with a spark, burned my arm, but I couldn't cry out. Otherwise, what awaited me would be his slap. But even so, he could still find fault. What are you standing there for? Hurry up and cook. I was so angry that my teeth were chattering. I wished I could take a knife and kill him right then. No, not yet. I want to make them live a life worse than death before I can truly vent my hatred. 03, at 10:30, the lottery results could be checked online. 10 minutes later, a national curse came from the master bedroom. Then there was a series of crashing and smashing sounds. My dad came out of the bedroom, his eyes blood red, looking murderous with hatred. We won, the big prize. 10 million yuan, but I didn't buy it. Why didn't I buy it? The feeling of losing the big prize like this almost drove him crazy. At first, Trevor rushed out excitedly. When he realized that the big prize had been missed and it was because he had said not to buy it, his face instantly turned extremely ugly. Then Trevor pointed the finger at me. It's all Harper's fault. It's because she's so unlucky. Otherwise, I would have asked her to buy it for me. My dad walked over with a gloomy face, scolding and rolling up his sleeves to beat me. You little brat, I feed you and clothe you. Is this how you repay me? My mom stopped him for a moment. The child didn't do it on purpose. Don't hit her, just make her kneel and reflect. After that, she tugged at me. Harper, Mom pleaded for you. You have to reflect well. I sneered in my heart. Clearly, I had done nothing wrong, and she still said she was pleading for me. In the past, I was so severely brainwashed and had never received any real love, so I mistook my mom's fake kindness for care and love. But it doesn't matter. I was reborn and won the big prize. I have enough money to live my life again properly. I went to claim the prize wearing a mascot costume. After tax, it was 8 million yuan. After going to the bank to exchange for a check, the 8 million yuan was deposited into my account, and I could finally start investing in my doomsday survival base. There are still 9 days until the extreme cold. Not a single moment can be wasted. In the previous 3 days, although I had no money, I wasn't idle. Instead, I carefully planned all the doomsday shopping lists. The first step was to find a safe shelter for myself. This shelter had to be big enough and safe enough to store a sufficient amount of goods. I had already thought it through. The doomsday survival shelter was the single-family villa behind our community. Our community had a style of coexisting high-rises and villas. Besides the 3 high-rise buildings in the front, all the buildings in the back were single-family villas, and the one I had my eye on was the single-family villa in the very corner. Its location was very secluded and quiet. Because it was so quiet, it was rumored to be a haunted house. This caused the price of this villa to drop significantly. In fact, the villa was very well decorated and was built according to the absolute fortress level. In the era of peace, there was actually someone who built high walls for the villa, strengthened the anti-theft doors and windows, and installed bullet-proof glass and bullet-proof doors. The ventilation ducts and fresh air system were all top-notch, and the partitions were also absolutely soundproof, heat-insulating, and heat-retaining. I had worked as a part-time cleaner in this villa before and knew some of the villa's layout that outsiders didn't know. When this villa was being built, a large enough basement was constructed underground. It was a 4-story underground basement, the largest in the entire community. It was big enough for me to stockpile all kinds of supplies. After getting the money, I immediately found an agent and said I wanted to buy this villa. The agent never expected that the haunted house that had been in his hands could be sold one day. Of course, he was extremely happy. The landlord even took the initiative to lower the price for me. Finally, it was said that 1 million yuan would be enough to close the deal. I quickly signed the contract. The moment I opened the door of the villa, I suddenly truly realized that this life would never repeat the mistakes of the past. I will live well in this villa all the time. 04. After getting the key to the villa, I immediately asked a master to change the lock. Then, I contacted a well-reputed and highly capable decoration team from another city and expressed my requirements. The other party said that my requirements were not a problem at all, as long as a week, the decoration could be completed. No, a week was too slow, then I wouldn't have time to stockpile goods, finish it within 3 days, and I'll pay double the price. If you can shorten the construction period further, I'll increase the price again. The other party immediately patted his chest excitedly and said that he would definitely do it for me as quickly as possible. I was very satisfied. Next was to stockpile supplies. The first supplies to stockpile were gasoline, firewood, and coal. Gasoline was used for fuel-powered electricity generation, and firewood and coal were to ensure that I could live warmly in the extreme cold weather. For these energy supplies, I stocked up enough for 10 years, with money as a support. Nothing was a problem, even the store gave a discount for buying in large quantities. In excitement, I asked them to stockpile another 5 years' worth for me. 15 years. In 15 years, production order should be restored no matter what. I have confidence in the country. It was almost dark, ever since I had the villa. I didn't want to go back home to live anymore. I didn't want to go back and face that bunch of beasts in my family. It was both disgusting and a waste of my precious remaining time. Most importantly, I couldn't appear in front of my dad and let him see me, so that he wouldn't think about how to use me to make more money. After thinking about it, I called my dad and carefully said that I had found a job as a nanny. The salary was very good, but I needed to live in. My dad immediately asked me to transfer the salary to him first. I sneered in my heart. I was not at all surprised by his reaction, but on the surface, I still stammered and said, "The employer has given me a 10-day probationary period to test my work ability first, so I can only get the salary for these 10 days of the probationary period. I can only get the formal salary after becoming a regular. Actually, if I could, I wouldn't want to give him a single cent, but that wouldn't work." My dad would come to the employer's place and cause trouble under the pretext of caring about his daughter until he forced the boss to give him the salary first. Giving him the probationary period salary was just to stabilize him for these 10 days, let him see the money in his hand so that he wouldn't think about selling me into the mountains immediately. Thinking like this, I transferred 10,000 yuan to him. "Dad, after I become a regular, I can get a monthly salary of 50,000 yuan. I'll transfer all the money to you then." My dad was very satisfied with my attitude and showed off, saying that if there were any good wine, good cigarettes, or good tea at the employer's place, I should remember to bring some back to honor him. What a scoundrel. He actually wanted me to steal things. The contempt in my heart grew even stronger. Dream on. This 10,000 yuan is the last thing you'll get from me. 05. After resolving the most urgent situation at home, I went back home and opened the door for the decoration team. After discussing with the other party all the mechanism settings and decoration arrangements for the basement, he asked me curiously, "Little girl, what are you doing with such arrangements for the basement?" I smiled and said, "I have persecution phobia. The doctor said that I can live in the basement for a while, which is conducive to the recovery of my condition." The way the other party looked at me was immediately filled with sympathy and pity. After making room for the decoration team, I went out to find a hotel to stay in. In the past, when I had no money and no love, whenever I went out, it was for work. I didn't dare to book a hotel. At most, I would find a 24-hour convenience store and lie on the bench for a night. Now that I had money, of course I had to live a life of luxury before the end of the world arrived. Who knew if these hotels would still be open after the extreme cold? The top-class luxury hotel that cost 8,000 yuan a day really lived up to its price. I was staying in the top-of-the-line presidential suite, enjoying top-grade steak, Australian premium lobster, and French black truffle desserts. These wonderful things I had never even dared to dream of in the past. I opened my phone's moments and found that Trevor was indeed complaining that the dinner wasn't good. Of course, my dad never entered the kitchen except to smoke, and my mom never cooked as long as I was at home. They were truly a family, and a family of vampires clinging to me. Unfortunately, the blood bag ran away by itself. I happily finished my dinner and then took a top luxury air transported flower bubble bath in the bathroom. I felt that the fatigue of the whole day's rush was soothed. I sipped the top grade red wine, sighing in my heart that it was so nice to have money, and at the same time planning in my mind to stockpile some such luxury items in the villa as well. In the past, being poor, I never dared to think about it. Now that I have money, I should really get some things for enjoyment. Thinking of this, I started to add various supplies to my plan. Among food and water, some top-grade ingredients must be included: Wagyu beef, Australian lobsters, black truffles, and red wine. I want them all. Some big brand skin care products can also be added. Due to my financial situation in the past, I usually just used Debeo, a common skin care product. No, staying in this luxurious presidential suite for one night, There is a whole cabinet full of top-notch skin care product samples for me to use. I can definitely order skin care products based on these samples. After making the list, I directly placed orders on Taobao.com. Anyway, these things should not be available in supermarkets and vegetable markets. There are also the silent fuel-powered generators I want, all kinds of nice-looking pots, pans, bowls, and ladles. Various kitchen utensils and ovens. After getting tired of swiping my phone, I quietly admired the starry sky through the floor to the ceiling window for a while. Then, I opened the shopping platform again and continued to place orders. I need to buy a drone and as many surveillance cameras as possible. The first night in the presidential suite passed in my non-stop shopping. As soon as it dawned, after having the hotel's luxurious buffet, I drove straight to the largest food wholesale market in the local area. Since I ordered enough of each item to last for 10 years, I didn't have the time to stay there and wait for the goods to be adjusted one by one. I simply found the person in charge and directly gave him the list, saying that I could pay first, but he had to help me with the goods allocation. The person in charge was so excited to get such a big business that he rubbed his hands and got busy. 06. It took a whole day just for the goods allocation. By the time the goods were ready in the evening, the decoration team had also completed their work. The decoration team was really conscientious and dedicated. They decorated it even better than I had imagined. The mechanisms in the basement were hidden devices that one would never think of. After entering the basement, it could be locked from the inside to prevent anyone from coming in again, and each of the 4-story basement had its own unique design. The first floor was simply decorated, mainly filled with shelves. The 100 square meter space on this floor could be directly used as a natural refrigerator. The second floor was designed as a planting area. I asked the workers to set up planting racks and planting lights so that fresh vegetables could be cultivated by myself. The third floor was my daily rest area. I installed a fireplace in the living room and equipped with sufficient ventilation and exhaust equipment. There were also a kitchen area, a fitness area, an electric entertainment area, and a bedroom. The fourth floor was mainly used by me to place a garbage disposal machine. Daily garbage could be processed and directly discharged into the sewer. In addition, any other miscellaneous goods could also be placed here. I paid the decoration team 3 times their salary and told them that the weather was abnormal and they should stockpile as much food and drink as possible. The other party took the money and thanked me with a grateful look. I don't know how much of my words they really listened to. This was all I could do. Then, the person in charge of the wholesale market delivered the goods to me. I specifically instructed them to cover the outside of the truck with some decoration materials for concealment, and I also informed the security guards that I was going to renovate the villa. In the end times, people's hearts are unpredictable. I don't want to attract covetous eyes. Shopping is fun for a while, but organizing the shelves is extremely tiring. In the next 2 days, I hardly went out of the villa and was busy organizing things all the time: rice, flour, various edible oils, sugar, vinegar, salt, and all kinds of seasonings enough to last for 30 years, concentrated soup bases, hot pot bases, dry pot seasonings, volcanic stone-grilled sausages, various hot pot balls, shrimp paste, and sliced meat, sufficiently cut frozen pork, frozen beef, frozen chicken, all kinds of meat cans, fruit cans, and vegetable cans, all kinds of fresh vegetables, vegetable seeds that can be planted, mushroom seeds, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and their roots. There were so many things, it was okay to just transport them to the basement first. It would not be too late to sort them out slowly after the extreme cold arrived. Then I went to a large supermarket. This time, I mainly bought snacks and daily necessities, all kinds of marinated foods, cakes, soft drinks, yogurt, freshly squeezed juices, nuts, and roasted seeds and nuts, all kinds of chocolates, ice creams, fried foods, instant noodles, loasafen, a kind of stinky noodles, and hot and sour noodles. I took dozens of boxes of each. In the daily and necessities area, of course, there were bath products, all kinds of toilet paper, all kinds of thick quilts, thick blankets, coral fleece pajamas and socks, hand warmers, electric blankets, electric stoves, all kinds of hardware tools, outdoor equipment. The fuel, firewood, and coal were delivered. There was no need to classify these carefully. They could be directly dragged to the 4th floor of the basement and piled up. It took another 2 days to order water, although there was enough snowfall in the extreme cold so that there was no need to worry about lack of water to drink. I was worried about the poor water quality, so I still ordered a sufficient amount of large, barreled mineral water. They were all transported to the 4th floor of the basement by elevator one by one. 07. When the express deliveries from Taobao.com arrived, I only unpacked a few cameras first. First, I installed them inside and outside the villa. Then I took out a few battery-powered miniature surveillance cameras that I specifically bought. These were specially left for my home. After all, I still wanted to see how miserable they would live in the end times. Taking advantage of the fact that they were all not at home at the moment, I quickly went back and installed cameras on the walls of each room. Then, after thinking about it, I dragged out the suitcase and started putting winter quilts and thick down jackets into it. I wouldn't leave them even one thick piece of clothing, let them freeze to death. While I was packing the suitcase, the sound of a key unlocking the door came from the entrance. My dad and Trevor came back early. Before they could get angry, I took the initiative to explain. The employer doesn't have my clothes and quilts. I'm packing some bedding to sleep at night. Trevor saw a winter quilt on the top layer and laughed at me. Harper, you're really a fool. It's so hot these days, and you actually want to cover yourself with a winter quilt. I lowered my head and didn't say a word. Laugh, laugh. You'll be the one screaming that you're freezing to death later. My dad frowned. Come back in a couple of days. I found a good marriage for you. My heart tightened. Even though I told my dad that the nanny job I found paid 50,000 yuan a month, it still couldn't dispel his idea of selling me for the bride price. That family's bachelors had finally come. My dad held a cigarette in his mouth without lighting it and smacked his lips a couple of times. Just come on June 14th, June 14th. I was secretly happy. That night was exactly when the extreme cold would arrive. Just watch the dogs bite each other, but I didn't dare to show any emotion on my face and just nodded woodenly. Trevor was extremely disgusted. Look at your stupid look. It's really disgusting. Why don't you get out of here quickly? My dad always listened to his precious son's words. He raised his foot and was about to kick me. Get out of here quickly. There's no dinner for you tonight. I was thus kicked out of the house. Looking back at the closed door, I only felt a sense of relief in my heart. I finally escaped from this family and would never come back again. In the last 3 days before the extreme cold arrived, I was almost always out shopping. Whenever I saw something good, I would buy it in large quantities. I changed to the latest top-of-the-line mobile phone, bought more than a dozen tablets, and also bought hundreds of USB flash drives in the electronics store. I asked people to help me download various novels, TV dramas, and movies. I also bought many game consoles and fitness equipment. When I was tired from shopping, I would find the best-rated food stores nearby and have a big meal, and then go to the boutique stores to buy all kinds of beautiful ornaments and small gadgets. All the things I had desired but couldn't get in my childhood were satisfied. It was at this time that I had a deep understanding of the idea of raising my childhood self again. On the last day before the extreme cold arrived, when I was coming back from shopping, I picked up a little orange cat in the bushes of the community. Almost the moment I picked up the cat, I knew that this little cat would be my companion in the extreme cold end times, so I immediately turned back to the pet store, had a physical examination and vaccinations for the cat, and got all kinds of medicines just in case: cat food, cat cans, cat treats, cat litter. I bought them all in quantities enough for 20 years. As for cat toys, cat climbing frames, and cat beds, I took everything I liked. I almost emptied the pet store. On the last day before the extreme cold arrived, June 14th, I went out for a big lunch one last time, after buying a bunch of snacks and milk tea. I returned to the villa at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I checked everything one last time. After confirming that all the doors and windows were tightly closed, I carried the little orange cat and entered the basement. After everything was ready, I sat on the sofa in the monitoring room, eating snacks and drinking milk tea, and waiting for the arrival of the end times with peace of mind. 08. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my mom sent me a message, asking if I had come back. Harper, buy some good vegetables and meat on the way. There are guests today. They want to taste your cooking skills. I sneered. What guests? They were clearly the buyers. The little orange cat sensed my emotions and took the initiative to come over and rub against me. I gave the cat a good pet. Indeed, cats can cure everything. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, my dad sent me a message. You dead girl. Why haven't you come back yet? We're waiting for you to cook dinner. I didn't reply, and my dad started to call me frantically as soon as I answered the phone. His roar came from the other end. If you dawdle any longer, believe it or not, I'll break your legs. I took a big sip of milk tea and said slowly, I'm busy, I can't go back. Dad, what? On the monitor, my dad's hair seemed to stand on end. He probably never thought that his timid daughter would directly reject him. Right. Trevor snatched the phone from him. You're not still at your boss's place, are you? He heard the sound of me chewing pearls and coconut jelly, and his tone immediately turned cold. We're all hungry, waiting for you to come back, and you're actually eating. I deliberately took a big sip of milk tea, and the sound of the straw sucking made a loud squeak. Yeah, I'm eating and drinking well here. Why should I go back? Trevor's sinister voice was full of venom. Fine, Harper. If you have the guts, don't come back. My reply was to directly hang up the phone and turn it off. On the monitor, the faces of the three-member family were extremely ugly. My mom was the first to break the awkwardness. She said to the two middle-aged men on the sofa, I'm really sorry. That dead girl doesn't know what's wrong with her today. She just refuses to come back. Otherwise, you two go back first and come back tomorrow. The older man on the sofa looked very unhappy. Sister-in-law. My family really wants to form a marriage with your family. Is your family just driving us two brothers away like this? Peter, have lived so long, and this is the first time I've been driven out hungry. Even if I agree, my younger brother Eric won't agree. Eric next to him squeezed his fists with a fierce look on his face and grinned at Trevor maliciously. Almost instantly, Trevor was so scared that his legs went weak. My dad was also suppressed by the momentum of these two men. He was speechless for a long time, then he finally came to his senses and shouted at my mom, "You dead woman, why don't you hurry up and go buy groceries and cook to entertain the two big brothers?" My mom was so startled. In the past, buying groceries and cooking were all my jobs. She was already used to being served by me. Now that I wasn't at home, she had finally fallen to the bottom, right, but there were men all over the room, and each of them was stronger than her. She could only go out reluctantly. I took a bite of the marinated duck neck and felt that it was both appetizing and satisfying to watch this scene. My mom came back at 7 o'clock in the evening. She had been in the vegetable market for 2 hours and was squeezed and sweated all over her body and face by the stuffy environment in the market. My dad not only didn't show her any sympathy but also disliked that she wanted to drink water and eat ice as soon as she came back. He said that at her age, she just knew how to be lazy. After scolding my mom, he drove her into the kitchen. Trevor was sitting in a corner of the sofa, playing games. When he heard my dad scolding my mom, he didn't even raise his head. My mom could only go to the kitchen to cook with a heart full of bitterness. It was stuffy and hot in the kitchen. She barely stir-fried a few dishes and then was so hot that she couldn't speak. She could only sit aside, panting and drinking water. The few men gobbled up the food on the dining table like pigs grabbing food, not leaving any for my mom at all. When my mom recovered and served the rice and came back to the table, there was no food left for her on the plate. She could only rummage through the kitchen and find a can of chili sauce and eat rice with chili sauce with tears in her eyes. I looked at the scene and thought it was so familiar and funny. In the past, when I cooked, the three of them never waited for me to come to the table before eating. My mom would always smooth things over at that time. There's chili sauce in the kitchen. You can just mix it with some rice and eat. Girls just can't eat that much. If you get fat, you won't look good. Why did she start crying when it was her turn to eat like this? Actually, this sentence was also suitable for her. After all, she wanted to be famous and be a star so much. She needed to lose weight the most. She must eat this rice with chili sauce several more times. 09. Peter and Eric didn't treat themselves as outsiders at all. After eating and drinking their fill, they went to drink my dad's wine again. My dad and Trevor were angry but dared not say anything. I was sitting in the monitoring room, looking at the three-member family who were as cautious as mice, and I really found it funny from the bottom of my heart. As the saying goes, villains must be punished by villains. Peter and Eric drank until very late and simply stayed at my house. They lived in my room. As soon as they entered my bedroom, they started rummaging through the boxes and cabinets, hugging my clothes and sniffing them wildly. Their perverted and wretched appearance made me feel a strong sense of physical discomfort. Fortunately, I took all my underwear with me when I packed the quilt before. Otherwise, if they found them and sniffed them like this, I would vomit up all the food I ate today. That night, I didn't go to bed early as usual. Instead, I stood in front of the floor-to-the-ceiling window of the villa, waiting quietly. The little orange cat yawned and came up, jumping into my arms. I hugged the cat and rubbed it gently. At exactly 12 o'clock, snowflakes fell from the sky on time, floating down like goose feathers towards the earth. The little orange cat probably had never seen snow before. It even stuck out its body curiously, trying to catch the snowflakes through the window. I smiled and opened the window a little, grabbed some snowflakes and showed them to it. It touched the snow, shivered from the cold, and then burrowed into my arms and was no longer curious. I opened the social media software, and sure enough, the sudden heavy snow was the hot topic online. No one took the snow seriously. Everyone was joking that they didn't know who had been wrong to make it snow in June. Some people also said that the snow was great. They had been unbearably hot for a long time, and this snow was just right to cool down. A few pessimistic crisis-aware people did call on everyone that the weather was abnormal and to quickly stockpile food and drinks for a few days, but they didn't say that the snow would keep falling. Only I knew that the snow was just the beginning. In the next 2 or 3 months, the temperature would only drop and not rise. By the 3rd day of the heavy snow, even the most carefree people felt that something was wrong. Supermarkets and vegetable markets were crowded with people snapping up goods. People no longer picked and chose. As long as it was something to eat or drink, they wanted everything. Prices skyrocketed for a while. I turned on the surveillance. Sure enough, my mom was also forced to go out to grab vegetables, rice, and flour. But she had lived a pampered life for many years and was no match for those aunties in the vegetable market. She froze outside for most of the day and only managed to grab a bag of rice and a basket of vegetables. Trevor took a look at the vegetable basket and was very dissatisfied. These vegetables are all wilted. How can we eat them? There's not even any meat. Do you want to starve me to death? My mom rubbed her shoulders and groaned. Trevor, you don't know, Mom was squeezed so hard that her whole body hurts. It was so hard to grab this little bit of food. My dad looked extremely impatient. It's just doing some work. Look how tired you are. And you keep talking non-stop. Why don't you hurry up and cook? Do you want to starve me to death? My mom didn't dare to talk back and carried the vegetables into the kitchen with her head bowed. As soon as the food was ready, Peter and Eric, who had been staying in my room, also came out. They didn't treat themselves as outsiders at all and started grabbing food with their rice bowls. Several times, the dishes Trevor wanted to eat were taken away by Eric. He was so angry that his eyebrows were knitted tightly enough to crush a mosquito. It was already difficult to go out and grab vegetables, rice, and flour, with two more middle-aged men with huge appetites at home. The rice bag was quickly emptied like a deflated balloon. What are you looking at? Do you want a beating? Eric, with a mouthful of food, waved his fist at Trevor. That fist was half the size of Trevor's face. Trevor was so scared that he lowered his head and buried himself in eating the rice without daring to look up. My dad wasn't much better. The dishes he wanted to eat were all taken away by Peter. My mom hadn't been able to sit at the table for several days and was already used to eating rice with chili sauce in the kitchen, but today, just as she opened the lid of the chili sauce, my dad and Trevor took the chili jar and went to eat it directly. My mom was stunned for a long time. She never expected that after being oppressed layer by layer, she wouldn't be able to eat rice with chili sauce one day. I watched them bring trouble on themselves after inviting the wolves into the house and laughed until tears came out. Then I happily went to the kitchen. They didn't have any meat to cook, but I had plenty. The casserole of stewed braised pork had been stewed for a long time. By now, it was already very tender. A chopstick could pierce right through it. I picked up a piece of braised pork with my chopsticks and put it in my mouth. The meat burst open where I bit it, and the rich sauce flavor filled my mouth. The meat was light, fresh, and delicious, with a crispy texture at the edges that were deliberately charred. The Maillard reaction created such a wonderful taste. The little orange cat had long been unable to resist the temptation and was meowing around my feet non-stop. I picked up a piece of meat, washed off the salt and sauce for it, cooled it down, and put it in its bowl. The little guy immediately started eating without even raising its head. On the 5th day of the continuous heavy snow, the temperature had plummeted to -20 degrees. At first, people thought about using the air conditioner to keep warm, but in the extreme cold, it was common for the wires to freeze. In addition, as more and more people used electricity to keep warm, the power system often collapsed. The relevant notice came down on the same day, except for the fixed time when electricity was allowed. There would be a power outage at other times. My dad and Trevor each wrapped themselves in a quilt and huddled in a corner of the sofa, shivering. My mom was also cold, but all the extra quilts at home had been taken away by Peter and Eric. She could only wear as many layers as possible and shiver while hugging a hot water bag. Even so, my dad still looked at her with discontent. What are you still sitting there for? Don't you know there's no food at home? Why don't you go out and buy some food? My mom shivered and said in a miserable tone, the prices of food outside have gone crazy. A bag of rice actually costs 10,000 yuan. How can we afford it? In these days of extreme cold, prices had almost increased in a straight line. Basic staple foods such as rice, flour, and oil had reached an exaggerated level. As for vegetables, fruits, and meat, ordinary families simply couldn't afford them. Warming and insulating supplies were no longer for sale. Any merchants who still had some inventory had long stockpiled these things for their own families to wear or to exchange for food, as long as someone was willing to sell. A pack of hand warmers could be snatched up even if it cost 1,000 yuan, however. None of this mattered to Trevor and my dad. They only knew that when they were hungry, they had to see food. Who told you not to stockpile some before? Now look, the price of rice is so high. I just found it funny. Anyone can be a Monday morning quarterback. I used to take care of all the eating and drinking. It was also me who stocked up a few bags of rice and flour when they were cheap. The three of them, who only knew how to eat and drink, of course didn't think of stocking up on food when prices hadn't gone crazy yet. My mom was severely scolded by her husband and son and was almost beaten. She could only go out with money, sobbing and shaking, to buy rice. She was gone for a long time. My dad and Trevor were so hungry that they rummaged through the kitchen cabinets and finally found a pack of instant noodle seasoning. The two grown men filled a pot with hot water with tears in their eyes, planning to share a pot of instant noodle seasoning soup. At this time, a big hand snatched the pot on the stove and the spoons in their hands. After Eric clenched his fists and intimidated them for a while, he swaggered back to the bedroom with the pot. I clearly saw the hatred in my dad's and Trevor's eyes. Look, they're not really swallowing their anger. 11. The fireplace on the 3rd floor underground was burning brightly. I brought out the steaming tomato and potato stewed beef brisket. freshly cooked braised spare ribs, and a big bowl of rice, and placed them all on the table in front of the fireplace. The firewood in the fireplace was crackling. I first took a bite of the beef brisket. The beef had been stewed until it was very tender and melted in my mouth. It had the sweet and sour taste of tomatoes. The potatoes were also soft, glutinous, and fragrant, even more delicious than the meat. While I was eating, my phone suddenly rang. On the other end of the phone was Trevor's gnashing teeth voice. "You did it on purpose. You deliberately took away all the thick quilts and thick down jackets a few days ago. You already knew it was going to get cold, didn't you?" I pretended to be confused. How could that be? If I could be clairvoyant, how could I be so poor? Trevor seemed to be convinced by me and changed the subject. "Are you still staying at your boss's place these days?" I nodded while sucking on a spare rib. "Yeah. I'm having a meal right now. Today, I made braised spare ribs and tomato and potato stewed beef brisket for the boss's family." As I spoke, I took a photo of the plate. On the other side, Trevor swallowed his saliva very loudly and then roared at me, "Harper, you come back with the meat and vegetables quickly. We're all starving to death." I went back to the monitoring room to watch the video. He was almost jumping with anger, whether from hunger or cold. I almost burst out laughing and changed my tone to a helpless one. "But the mountain is blocked by heavy snow here. The snow is 2 meters high. I can't go back either." My dad snatched the phone. "Whatever method you use, you have to crawl back for me." I deliberately took a big suck on the bone marrow of the spare rib towards the phone. Then, from the monitor, I saw my dad's face turn livid instantly. "No can do. This meat has to be eaten while it's hot, otherwise, the flavor will be worse when it gets cold." Before he could speak, I hung up the phone and then turned it off and threw the phone aside. On the monitor, my dad was almost fuming. "That dead girl, I'm starving and freezing here, while she's feasting over there. When she comes back, I'll beat her to death." However, no matter how much he jumped around or how many times he called me, he couldn't get through to the phone again. After jumping around until he was tired, he finally sat down on the sofa, panting. At around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my mom finally came back, shaking. What greeted her was my dad's long, suppressed and unvented anger. My dad slapped my mom in the face. "Damn old woman, you were out for so long. Did you go out to enjoy good food and drink like that slutty girl?" My mom was so scared that she didn't even dare to cry. She nervously held up the bag to show. "I went to 3 vegetable markets today and finally snatched this little bit of rice from someone else." As she spoke, she couldn't help but feel proud again. "I saw that person buying the rice and snatched it. I didn't spend a single cent." Trevor snatched the rice bag and started complaining. "This little bit of rice isn't even enough for 2 people to share." My mom looked miserable. "This little bit of rice costs 300 yuan. And the other person might not even be willing to sell it." Before my dad could speak, Peter and Eric came out of the bedroom. One of them snatched the rice bag, and the other pushed Trevor. "What are you doing?" Trevor was both shocked and frightened and stuttered when he spoke. Eric's big hand, like a cattail fan, poked his forehead and directly poked him to the ground. "You and your dad go out and buy rice, flour, meat, and vegetables for us 2 brothers." Trevor angrily shook the fat on his face. "Why should I? Just because of this." Eric waved his big fist and brought it down hard, beating Trevor until he whined like a dog. My dad wanted to go up and stop the fight, but Peter gently pressed him on the sofa, and he didn't even have the ability to sit up straight. Finally, Eric shook his fist and threatened, "If we don't see meat and vegetables on the table today, you and your dad will both get a beating, and we won't show any mercy, understand?" Trevor, shaking the fat on his body, climbed up shakily and quickly ran out with my dad. My mom wanted to follow them out to take a look, but Peter slapped her and drove her into the kitchen. "Why don't you hurry up and steam the rice? In our village, women get beaten too, you know." I watched the monitor, happily eating the tomato, beef brisket, and potato over rice. Sure enough, watching villains torment villains was the most satisfying thing. 12. These days, I had been having meals while watching the surveillance. Since Trevor and my dad were forced to go out to buy rice, meat, and vegetables, their hell had officially begun. They would get beaten if they bought too little, if they didn't buy any meat, and even if they ate 1 more spoonful of rice while eating, they would be beaten to the ground by Peter and Eric. Trevor and my dad, who couldn't fight back in the first place, became completely submissive after being beaten for a few days. Now, as soon as Eric waves his fist, the 2 of them will reflexively hug their heads and squat on the ground. This scene has made me laugh countless times. On the other hand, I made delicious food and drinks for myself every day, changing the variety. In the morning, I ate lightly, usually having black truffles, Cordyceps sinensis, and Termitomyces albuminosus with congee. At noon, I had big dishes, such as stewed pork knuckle, braised pork slices, sweet and sour spare ribs, beef stew. In the evening, I made various things, such as boiling hot pot, making barbecue, roasting a chicken in the oven, or frying steak and cooking Australian lobster. Eating like this, my belly has rounded out a bit, unlike my dad and the others who often went out and were always getting beaten, so they could keep their figures so well. The temperature continued to drop, and there was no more food for sale on the market. The surviving people could only form groups and go out to search for supplies. Actually, it was to look for food in empty houses. It seemed that my dad and the others didn't go to empty houses but directly robbed the homes of the elderly, the young, women, and children. The team composed of him, Trevor, Peter, and Eric was very tough. They could almost always come back with loot every time. These scumbags. I was angry but helpless. Fortunately, the people in the community quickly united. The elderly, the young, women, and children stayed at home and didn't go out. The other homeowners in the community formed a self-defense team and beat them up whenever they saw them. Finally, they were beaten so hard that the four of them didn't dare to go out. My villa had also been snooped around. At first, a few people climbed over the courtyard wall and looked inside through the floor to the ceiling window. They only saw construction materials all over the ground. It was obvious that the house was still under renovation and hardly anyone had lived in it. The second group of people who came were not willing to give up. They broke in at midnight with crowbars and lock-picking tools to search, but all the food, drinks, and useful supplies had been moved to the underground by me. They finally confirmed that this was just a house under renovation with no signs of habitation. I huddled in the monitoring room with the little orange cat and turned off all the power, even though I knew they couldn't hear the sound in the basement. I still took all the precautions. It was false to say that I wasn't afraid, but when the little orange cat's belly rumbled in my arms, I was soothed. It was said online that this was the sound a cat made when it felt comfortable and trusted. If the little orange cat wasn't afraid, I shouldn't be either. After about 3 or 4 days, all the people who could climb over the wall had searched through the place and returned empty-handed. Finally, no one spied on this villa anymore. It was also at this time that I finally had the interest to cook a hot pot for myself instead of just eating bread with milk. The hot pot was filled with enoki mushrooms, tofu, shrimp paste, fatty beef, and fatty mutton. I carried the steaming small pot to the monitoring room. I hadn't watched the surveillance for 3 or 4 days, and I was also very curious about what had happened. Strangely, there were no Peter and Eric in the room, only my dad and the other 3 were sitting around the dining table, as if they were drinking meat broth. At a time like this, where did the meat broth come from? A thought suddenly came to my mind, and I went back to watch the recording. On the second day after the surveillance was turned off, Trevor somehow got a bottle of white wine and shakily offered it to Peter and Eric. After the two of them got drunk and fell asleep, my dad and Trevor rushed into the bedroom with meat cleavers and hacked the 2 strong men on the bed to death with several knives. I felt a stomach cramp. When I was hacked to death, the impact of the scene wasn't as great as watching it from the sidelines. I was so disgusted that I almost vomited out what I had eaten. After the 2 of them hacked the strong men to death, they dismembered the bodies. The meat was directly spread out. Anyway, the temperature was low, so there was no need to worry about it going bad. I didn't want to watch anymore and turned off the surveillance. 13 for several consecutive days, I didn't watch the surveillance anymore. Instead, I found some TV dramas and movies to watch. The little orange cat got into my arms, purring and bringing me comfort, with the company of the cat. I finally managed to walk out of the shadow. I turned on the surveillance again 2 months later. There was still meat broth on the table, but this time, my mom was gone, and the human leg hanging in the kitchen was obviously that of a middle-aged woman. I was no longer afraid of such a scene. I just stared at my dad and Trevor. Their eyes were numb and venomous. They no longer had the appearance of human beings as they did 2 months ago. Sitting at the table were just 2 beasts that ate people. I turned on the microphone of the surveillance camera. Trevor, Wesley, there was no electricity in the community at the moment. The 2 of them never expected that someone would call their names. They were so frightened that their bowls tipped over. I continued to ask, "Is the meat broth delicious?" Trevor was the first to react, his eyes wide with anger. "Harper, where are you? How do you know? Not only did I see it, but I also recorded it. Do you think you can cover up the bad things you've done? I'll expose the videos of you 2 eating people so that everyone can see what beasts you are." Wesley took out a meat cleaver from the kitchen and started hacking and chopping randomly at the air. "You dead girl, where the hell are you? I'm going to chop you up and stew you for meat." In his random hacking and chopping, Trevor, who was next to him, was cut on the shoulder and fell directly to the ground. Wesley, like a madman, swung the meat cleaver at Trevor. "Dad, it's me, Trevor." Trevor rolled on the ground in pain, but Wesley's knife didn't stop. I looked at the camera compassionately and slowly said, "Trevor, haven't you realized it yet? Wesley is going to chop you. Have you run out of meat at home?" There was no more food left, but there were still 2 people at home, so whoever made the first move would have a better chance of surviving. Trevor suddenly realized, I don't know where he got the great strength, but he pushed Wesley away and stumbled into the kitchen to take out another meat cleaver. The 2 of them, no, the 2 beasts, with the hatred of either you die or I die, drew their knives and hacked at each other. Blood spurted everywhere, and the 2 of them confronted each other, determined to fight to the death. I closed my eyes and turned off the surveillance. I had already guessed the ending of the 2 of them. They had lost too much blood. Neither of them could survive. I never turned on that surveillance again. 14. I lived in the basement for a year. A year later, although it was still extremely cold, the temperature finally showed signs of warming up. Many people finally dared to go out of their homes, either exchanging labor for food or going to the community to receive national subsidies. I didn't lack food, drinks, or clothes, so I didn't go out to receive this subsidy. I had the little orange cat. Oh no, it was already a fat orange cat, accompanying me, however. Having been reborn, I would never let myself end up in such a fate again. Hardship. There was finally some life on the streets. Many people were gone, but more people were living actively and bravely after the disaster. More and more people on the internet were also sharing how they had survived this year. They had all met kind-hearted people and supported each other to get through. As for those who took advantage of the disaster to loot, they were excluded from social interaction. No one would associate with such despicable and selfish people. When the community was cleaning, they smelled the stench of decay in my house. The two corpses in the house, still in the posture of hacking at each other, shocked everyone. The dried human leg meat hanging in the kitchen was even more terrifying. A few days later, I quietly walked out of the basement, pretending that I had come back from working at the boss's house to check on my home. The property management awkwardly said that because they couldn't contact me all the time, they had to drag the corpses out hastily and bury them in a cemetery. As for that corpse, it's better that you don't look at it. It might scare you, a little girl. I pretended to be sad and at the same time did not forget to express my gratitude for the property management's concern. The moment I walked out of the property management center, I only felt extremely relaxed. There were still a lot of stocked-up supplies left. I took the initiative to hand over a quarter of them to the country, expressing my hope to do my bit to restore production. I planned to keep half for myself and sell the remaining quarter for money. The relevant department was very touched and took the initiative to say that they could help me. With their help, I almost quickly sold off my inventory, coupled with the severe shortage of supplies after the natural disaster. I made a huge profit from this reselling, much more than the lottery jackpot I won, but no one dared to pick on me because my donation had earned me recognition and endorsement from the relevant department. When I walked out of the gate of the office hall, the sky was very blue, and the sunlight shone through the thick clouds onto the metal on my chest. It was like a layer of golden armor. No one could hurt me anymore. The hardships were over, and the road ahead was bright. Story 2. When the nuclear war broke out, our family set up a shelter in an abandoned factory. My dad was in charge of construction projects, while my mom handled logistics. My eldest brother, with his impressive abs, turned into a rough man of the fields, thriving in breeding and farming. My second brother, the scholarly black sheep, developed water purification, power generation, and security systems, bringing the abandoned factory back to life. One day in March, I woke up from a nightmare, vaguely remembering that my body was decaying and I was close to death. But now, I was completely intact. Seeing my parents enter the room, I was overjoyed. We were reborn, 2 weeks before the outbreak of the nuclear war. No one knew exactly when the war started. Initially, Country M repeatedly provoked us at the border. After several conflicts, using the deaths of combatants as a pretext, they imposed economic and military sanctions on our country. It was like knocking over a row of dominoes. Many countries joined in, and the disputes continued. By the end of March, the fifth round of negotiations had failed. That evening, nuclear alarms sounded in the southern and central regions of our country. Country M destroyed ports and several crucial military bases. Our country officially entered the war. Signaling the outbreak of the nuclear conflict, enemy nuclear missiles struck various locations, and both of my brothers died in the explosions. Our neighborhood was also attacked. Those fortunate enough were drawn in a lottery to enter well-protected underground bunkers. We could only take refuge in a parking garage. It was inadequate against the blast wave. The intense shock caused us injuries, and the subsequent nuclear dust was unstoppable. We quickly became contaminated, first with vomiting, diarrhea, and itchy skin, and then our chromosomes began to change. No matter what medication we took to block the effects or boost our immunity, even transplanting white blood cells, nothing worked. In a hazy memory, my skin peeled off, my mucous membranes were damaged, and I lay in bed like a puddle of mud, often needing emergency care due to organ failure and severe bleeding. My parents died quickly. I wanted to die too, but I didn't even have the strength to do so. It was the most desperate and painful time. Fortunately, we came back unscathed. Our family embraced each other, crying tears of joy. After crying, we began to strategize. My dad glanced at the calendar. We've only got a week left. We need to call the older boys back and find a shelter. At that statement, we all fell silent. Nuclear missiles had struck many places, and even areas that weren't directly hit were contaminated with nuclear dust. If there were any safe places, they would be the large, strongly fortified government bunkers, but those places required a lottery for entry, and resources like food and medicine were scarce there. After a long time, my dad decided, we'll consider the location later. Let's start preparing now. I immediately called my older brothers, who were still at school, and told them to come home quickly. They were very confused on the phone. Clearly, they didn't have the memories from our previous life. Only my parents and I were reborn, in a rush. I made up a wild excuse. Some guys at school bullied me again, and when Dad went to confront them, he was severely injured. If you don't come back now, it might be too late. I successfully persuaded them to book the earliest flight. By this time, my parents were already preparing the supplies. For food, we could only bring items that were easy to store and carry: chocolate, compressed biscuits, marinated eggs, canned porridge, instant noodles, and plenty of drinking water. We prepared a simple gas stove, dry noodles, and rice, which could be used to cook food and boil water if necessary. Considering nutritional needs, we bought boxes of apples and pears, as well as some dried vegetables and meat. Cleaning supplies were also essential. We bought lots of toilet paper, sanitary pads, and disposable underwear to avoid running out of fuel or electricity on the road. My dad also bought a large barrel of diesel, an outdoor power source, and several power banks. Additionally, he prepared tools like knives, ropes, axes, and binoculars. My dad worked in construction, so he was skilled in making do with available materials. At home, we had a pickup truck used for hauling materials. We loaded it with all our stuff and wrapped everything in tarpaulins. After pondering for a moment, my mom tossed a few quilts and a bag of clothes onto the pile, just some simple sportswear. While they were still racking their brains to figure out if we were missing anything, I quietly opened up the map. I wanted to contribute something too. I had to drop out in my second year of high school due to poor health, but that didn't mean I was without any skills. I have an excellent memory and can recall events from a long time ago. The last time there was an explosion, the internet went down, but the radio kept receiving signals, so I could roughly remember the locations that had been bombed. I grabbed a pen and marked the spots that were about to be bombed. The more I recalled, the colder my heart felt. Our central region was almost completely devastated, with hardly any safe zones left. That night, a flood of memories washed over me, and the radio news echoed in my mind over and over. In a flash, I suddenly remembered something. One day, when I was hospitalized and seriously ill, I learned an important piece of information from a nurse changing my dressings. She mentioned that the government was planning to build a base in the mountains. I checked on my phone and it made sense. Nuclear bombs wouldn't be wasted on remote, uninhabited areas, and high rugged mountains could block radioactive dust. I suddenly sat up, pushed open my parents' bedroom door, and shared this information with them. After a busy day, my parents were already asleep, but they quickly sat up when they heard me. My mom responded swiftly, "The mountains would be safe, right?" After hearing my reasoning, my dad had an epiphany. "I know where we should go." He mentioned Yunchuan County was a suitable place. Over 50 years ago, my grandfather had responded to the national call for the Third Front movement and moved to Yunchuan County at the southwest border, starting from scratch. Enduring hardships, they transformed a barren land into a large-scale mechanical factory known as Yunchuan Machinery Plant. The factory was once very prosperous, employing over 4,000 workers. However, as the old state-owned enterprise declined, it was gradually relocated around the year 2000, and now the area is uninhabited. The surrounding area is sparsely populated and the factory is surrounded by rivers, so there is no shortage of water sources. Such a remote location would be out of reach from nuclear bombs, and the surrounding mountains could block the drifting radioactive dust. It would be an ideal haven after the apocalypse. My mom agreed. When these Third Front factories were built, they underwent strict scrutiny, all chosen as good places to avoid war chaos, and inside Yunchuan Machinery Plant, there's a very deep air raid shelter. We used to hide there during air raid drills when I was a child, my dad added, his eyes gleaming. They excitedly discussed for a long time before concluding, "Let's sleep now, we have a busy day tomorrow." The next morning, my parents continued to shop for supplies, and I went to the airport to pick up my brothers. My elder brother, James, a third-year student at the Agricultural University, sports a six-pack and works out daily, appearing sharp and often sarcastic, but he's actually quite whiny and spoiled in private. My second brother, Jacob, a second-year student in a science and engineering program, is always serious and dressed in shirts and trousers, a scheming and profound person who focuses on big projects. Despite their differences, the two brothers share a strange kind of harmony. The first thing they said in unison after getting off the plane was, "Little sister, who's been bullying you?" The second thing, "Why has he come back too?" I dragged them out of the airport with one hand each. Once in the car, I held them back as they were about to ask questions. "Our family hasn't encountered any trouble," I lied to you, "but a nuclear war is going to break out in 5 days, and most people will die. We need to stick together as a family." Both brothers looked at me. Moments later, both of them nodded in agreement. It was only later that I learned they didn't actually believe there would be a war, but seeing my determination, they chose to trust me. When we returned home, I found that my dad had loaded all the renovation tools and some building materials onto the pickup truck. He said the residential building in the abandoned factory had been deserted for 20 years, and it was uninhabitable without renovations. My mom had gone to the mall to buy more cotton bedding and clothes for changing, including both winter and summer attire, because conservatively estimating, we might end up staying there for a year or two, maybe even longer. She also prepared kitchen supplies thoroughly, almost like setting up a small family kitchen. We also stocked up on a considerable amount of medicines, a whole large box, ranging from antibiotics and cold medicines to treatments for injuries, headaches, and gastroenteritis, not to mention a good supply of bandages, adhesive plasters, gauze, and hemostatic powder. The pickup was packed full, and my dad had rented another van, reasoning that since both of my brothers had driver's licenses, it would be safer for our family to travel in two vehicles. My eldest brother, a graduate student in agriculture, had bought a large variety of seeds as well as sweet potatoes and potatoes, saying that once we got there, we would have to be self-sufficient. My second brother went to buy solar panels and various mechanical equipment and tools, which filled most of the van. I was also busy, first following online recommendations to order 3 apocalyptic Bibles from the nearest online bookstore: the Barefoot Doctor's Manual, the Militia Training Manual, and the Military Civil Dual-Use Talent Guide. The Barefoot Doctor's Manual provided solutions to various medical issues, all feasible under rudimentary conditions. With it, most health issues could be managed. The Militia Training Manual taught how to quickly form a competent armed force and included a particularly useful chapter on protection after a nuclear explosion. The Military Civil Dual-Use Talent Guide, though seemingly disorganized, was very practical, covering everything from military agriculture, small farm machinery, civil construction, and cooking, to less practical knowledge like accounting and photography. Rumor had it that with these 3 books, no matter what era or situation one found themselves in, they could become a legendary figure. While waiting for the books to arrive, I downloaded various books and many movies and novels online. During our breaks, we watched the news, which was full of border disputes and negotiation sessions. Rumors were rampant, but most believed the situation would be resolved without escalating to war, including the experts, who appeared very confident, treating it as a mere crisis. Just like in my previous life, this blind confidence from the experts left us unprepared for the dire consequences that followed. By the time we finished, it was past midnight. Fearing the night would bring more troubles, we filled up the gas and set off. The drive to Yunchuan was about 300 kilometers. Calculating the time, we expected to arrive by around 5 in the morning. To prevent any issues from my brothers, our parents had me sit between them in the truck, keeping an eye on them throughout the journey. Sure enough, it wasn't long before the 2 strapping young men started arguing over the route. One thought the highway was faster, the other felt the national road was safer. I ended the dispute with a firm decision: stop arguing. Listen to Dad. Through the walkie-talkie, my dad gave a clear answer. Considering the checks, there are checkpoints everywhere, especially now during this sensitive negotiation period. So let's take the highway. It looks less suspicious. If we're questioned, we'll say we're moving houses, and you guys are delivering parts to a machinery factory. Later, just as expected, we encountered 2 inspections, and with my dad's savvy, we passed them perfectly. At 4:30 in the morning, we entered Yunchuan County, and just when we felt safe, we faced the 3rd inspection. This time, several fully armed middle-aged policemen arrived. After a thorough inspection with their equipment, they asked us to open the van. Where are you headed? Long haul, delivering parts to a machinery factory in Guizhou. My older brother, wearing a cap, tried to appear calm. Oh, he scrutinized us, delivering parts overnight. I was extremely nervous, feeling guilty without committing any crime. I guess my older brother felt the same, as he gripped the steering wheel tightly, his veins bulging. For a straightforward and simple man like him, lying was quite difficult. At the critical moment, my second brother casually asked, "Officer, we urgently need these parts. Is there any problem?" The middle-aged police officer waved his hand, signaling us to go, finish the delivery and head back quickly, and be safe. After we passed, I looked back at the police officer, who still stood there, watching our movements. My older brother took a deep breath. That scared me to death. Nearly got caught halfway. I felt uneasy too and whispered to my brothers, "I think he suspected something." My second brother grinned. With the current situation being tense, it's normal for people to feel uneasy. Since he let us go, we're safe. Afterwards, weighed down by my thoughts, the 3 of us didn't speak again. A sense of defeat and helplessness overwhelmed me. As we left, we agreed not to disclose anything under the guise of being good-hearted. First, no one would believe us, and second, exposing ourselves would only bring trouble. We're not saviors. We can't save this crumbling world. All we can do is save ourselves when we're under a collapsing wall. The most we could do was subtly inform our relatives and friends after ensuring our own safety. An hour after leaving Yunchuan County, our car snaked through a narrow, steep mountain road. Looking over the guardrail, there was a rushing river. The area was desolate and nearly uninhabited. Around 6 o'clock, we finally arrived at Yunchuan Machinery Factory. The heavy iron gate was rust-covered, and tall weeds knee-high surrounded the large but decrepit factory building, resembling a long-dead beast. This would be our new home. We struggled to pry open the large iron lock and drove the two cars in. That's when something strange happened. From the grass near the left side of the factory, a hunched shadow appeared. I was startled and about to alert my family when the grass shook slightly, and the shadow disappeared. I stared in disbelief, rubbing my eyes hard, and looked at the desolate grass for a long time. "Did you see a shadow?" They all said no. Confused, I said, "I thought I saw someone by the bushes." My father and older brother went to check it out but found nothing. Yunchuan Machinery Factory has been deserted for a while. Everyone has moved away, unless some homeless person was passing by. My father said with certainty, "I must have been mistaken, especially since I was highly tense all night and hadn't slept at all in the car." By now, it was 7 in the morning and daylight was upon us. We parked the cars on the open ground of the factory, ate some dry food, and then went to look for a suitable place to live. Leaving the factory, a major road stretched forward with many houses that seemed to be a residential area. We walked past the employee club, the sports field, the hospital, all battered and frozen in time, from 20 years ago. Finally, we stopped in the family quarters. These 4 to 5-story buildings, mostly corridor-connected tube buildings, were all corners covered with moss and weeds, and the doors and windows were nearly all broken. But compared to other places, this area was more suitable for living. My father, who was used to doing renovations, inspected with his hands behind his back. "Not bad, just needs a bit of cleaning and it'll be livable." My father was a small contractor, usually commanding around a dozen workers. At that moment, he showcased his talent for leadership. He instructed his older brothers to drive the car in. Then they began the cleanup, shoveling all the discarded stones and debris outside onto the open ground. My mother and I cleaned the walls, tearing off the stained and blotchy newspapers before scraping off the flaking plaster with a small shovel, with many hands making light work. It only took us a couple of hours to clear out 3 rooms on the first floor. After a long search, my dad found several intact glass windows elsewhere and replaced the broken ones by taking from one wall to patch another. We also used wooden boards to fix up 3 simple doors, equipped with locks and bolts for normal use. We picked up some bricks for a base, laid down wooden boards and cotton padding to make simple beds, and even nailed together some wooden tables and benches. Outside the door, we built a stove using stones. The area was surrounded by dry branches and trees, providing an endless supply of fuel for burning. As for the water source, my second brother had specifically checked it. The wide river was very clear. Just to be safe, we also prepared a large number of purification tablets in quicklime, which could further purify the water. It took us 1 day to tidy up. Although everything was very basic, it was a decent temporary dwelling. Because we were busy in the morning and at noon, we just ate some dry food. But in the evening my mother cooked our first dinner at the base. She boiled a large pot of sweet potato porridge, stir-fried some wild vegetables, and cooked a few homemade sausages. This meal, which would be considered modest at home, tasted delicious here, especially after a day's hard work which left us exhausted. Each of us had a large bowl. Our family sat in the spacious yard, looking at the desolate abandoned factory, each lost in their own thoughts. My eldest brother was quite puzzled. "Is there really going to be a war? Mom, Dad, sister, could it be some kind of illusion you all are having?" The 3 of us were certain and uncontrollably began describing the horrific memories from our past lives. My second brother adjusted his glasses. Typically, a country would bolster its reserves of oil and gold before preparing for war. They would also compulsorily requisition and hoard essential supplies like cotton, medicine, steel, wood, and food. But I've checked all the recent news, and there's no trace of such activities. "To be honest, I also find it strange," I said confidently. "If there were early signs, the country wouldn't be so unprepared. The only possibility is that we've been deceived." "Do you mean we thought it was negotiation, but it was actually a trap?" My eldest brother frowned. I nodded. Country is always full of tricks and has no credibility. Plus, with their numerous puppet states, it's normal for them to act shamelessly. My second brother agreed. They must have been preparing for war for a while, simply looking for any pretext that would benefit them. My dad also agreed with this view, but this is a scenario where both sides will suffer. Once nuclear weapons are involved, no one can emerge unscathed. We fell silent. Indeed, human conspiracies always aim to target others, but in the end, they often lead to mutual destruction. We were too ordinary, powerless against the complexities of the world. We discussed and decided to subtly warn our relatives and friends as per our initial plan. We each sent out messages, all roughly saying that the current situation seemed off, advising them to stock up on supplies and find bomb shelters in advance. However, the responses were disappointing. They were all very perfunctory. There are always similar marketing messages every day. Don't worry, a war won't happen. Those who are meant to die will die. There's no escaping it. Let's not worry about that. Why prepare? If there really is a war, the national reserves are surely ample. So rest assured, we each sat there, shaking our heads. Actually, this was an outcome we had anticipated, yet when it occurred, we still felt a sense of helplessness. That night, we went to bed early. I thought I would be unable to sleep and feel scared, but after a whole day of exhausting endeavors, the moment I lay down, I fell asleep. Just before dawn, I thought I heard some rustling footsteps outside the window. It seemed like someone was by the window, but how could that be possible? I was too lazy to open my eyes, so I just turned over and went back to sleep. When I got up in the morning, it was already 8 o'clock. I headed to the slope behind the house to use the restroom. As I passed the back window, I was startled. Beneath the dusty windowsill, there were 2 footprints smeared with yellow mud, which trailed off up the slope and then disappeared. The sounds I heard weren't an illusion. There really was someone peering through our window. It was truly chilling to think that this person could be a wanted criminal or a psychopath, like a ticking time bomb ready to explode at any moment. I immediately informed my family about this, and everyone was very alert, prepared to find out who this mysterious person was. There were too many abandoned buildings in the factory area, so we put down our work and began a thorough search. Around noon, my older brother sent a message saying they had found the person. It wasn't a criminal or a psychopath as we feared, but an old man. My father was stunned for a few seconds. How is that possible? People moved away from here 20 years ago, and I don't remember anyone choosing to stay. We hurried over to the far end of the factory area, where in a small bungalow, we met the old man. He was wearing an old, faded work uniform and was busy with a hoe in the field. Seeing us approaching, he looked confused and a bit nervous. My brother whispered, "The old man just asked me if I was here for a buyout." It was awkward to respond. The old man moved his lips and spoke up. "What are you here for? Is this factory being rebuilt?" My father stared at him for a few seconds, then excitedly rushed over and grabbed his hand. "Uncle Lou, do you recognize me? I'm Jason." Jason. The old man was even more puzzled. Jason, the electrician's second son. My father was genuinely excited, bursting into an animated recount. "When I was a kid, I even stole coal briquettes from your house, and you chased me around the factory with a broom, remember?" After hearing this, the old man's lips twitched slightly, showing an expression as if he was grinding his teeth. "That's hard to forget," my father, with an expression of finding a long-lost friend, said. "Didn't everyone from the factory move away? How come you're still here?" As they exchanged pleasantries, I gathered most of the story. It turned out that Grandpa had not been very fortunate in life. His wife had died early, and he had no children, leaving him with no one else to care about. So, when everyone moved, he adamantly chose not to follow. Ignoring everyone's advice, he stayed alone in this deserted, abandoned factory, where he had lived for over 20 years. He took us to see where he lived. A simple little courtyard with 2 dogs, his only companions in his lonely life. He told us he grew his own crops, raised chickens, and occasionally fished in the river, so surviving was not an issue. For essentials like oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar, he had someone bring them over, a fishing enthusiast who visited every month or 2. "Aren't you lonely living alone all this time?" my mother asked. He shook his head. I got used to it. He then asked why we had come here, and my father hesitated before vaguely explaining, "We had a bit of trouble at home. Just here to lay low for a while." Grandpa immediately understood. "Oh, you're in debt, right? Everything's normal." "Normal. A few years back, we had someone in debt staying with us for several months," said Grandpa. Grandpa mentioned that he noticed us yesterday, seeing us in a car. He thought we were buyers or something and was a bit worried about being disturbed. Now that he knows we are hiding from debtors, he feels relieved. The conversation was both pleasant and awkward. As we said goodbye and were leaving, my oldest brother was clearly not pleased. "Do we look like people who would have bad habits?" The second brother glanced at him sideways. "Remove the we. It's you who looks it." "Nonsense. Believe it or not, I'll slap you," the oldest brother said, moving quickly to grab the second brother by the neck with his elbow, but the second brother quickly wriggled free. On the way back, the 2 of them kept fooling around. My parents and I are used to it and just followed behind, smiling quietly. After returning, we continued with our infrastructure work. Currently, we need to solve 2 major problems: unloading the items from the car and preparing water storage in advance. Logically, this place being an abandoned factory with no population around, there's almost no chance of it being bombed, but, having died once, we are still extra cautious and determined to be fully prepared. My dad had lived here for many years and vaguely remembered the location of the air raid shelters, though they were locked. They were just old-fashioned iron locks, easily opened with tools. The air raid shelter was very dry but reeked of a strong smell of machine oil. Using flashlights, we saw many machines wrapped in plastic sheets inside. That afternoon, we drove the car to the entrance and stored most of the water, emergency medicines, and other survival resources there. Only the items we needed for the next few days remained in the car. As for water storage, the factory had several water reservoirs. We chose 2 indoor ones with tight seals. These reservoirs hadn't been used for years and were quite dirty with a lot of moss. We thoroughly cleaned these 2 tanks with tools, then used a hose to channel water from the river to fill them up, and left them overnight with water purification tablets. The next day, after draining and rinsing the reservoirs again, we refilled them with clean water, now ready to use. While we were working, Grandpa curiously watched us several times, occasionally giving advice on the fastest routes. The more he watched, the more puzzled he became. "Why are you moving so much stuff and cleaning the water tanks?" My dad half jokingly and half seriously said, "With all the intense negotiations recently, what if a war breaks out? It's always good to be prepared." Grandpa shook his head vigorously. "What war? Those little devils wouldn't dare to mess with us. If they come, we'll flatten them." I sighed inwardly. His thinking was still stuck in the era of wars from years ago. Indeed, after the nuclear war in our previous lives, we had mobilized the whole country to retaliate destructively against Country M, but killing 1,000 enemies cost us 800 of our own. We also suffered heavily in the war. In any war, no country can emerge unscathed. The escalating flames of war destroy everyone. For ordinary people like us, the chances of survival are very slim, and luck plays a significant role. For instance, our neighbors were lucky. 3 of them managed to secure 2 spots in a government air raid shelter and survived. We dare not gamble with our lives. Having died once, we know the pain all too well and wouldn't dare risk it again. Over the next 2 days, we did a lot of infrastructure work. My brothers reinforced the factory doors, found some discarded lime, and took turns whitewashing the walls of several rooms. Since the brick block bed legs made for an uneven sleeping surface, my oldest brother, who slept terribly, one night collapsed the brick bed, so my dad took up carpentry again. He gathered materials and made several wooden beds. They looked a bit rough but had a natural charm, and you could still smell the fresh scent of the wood when you lay on them. My mom and I weren't idle either. We cleaned out another room to use as a kitchen, organizing everything neatly and setting up the cassette stove and wood-burning stove inside. This way, we wouldn't have to worry about cooking during rainy or windy days. Now, the tube-shaped apartment dormitory began to feel a bit like home. I even made some window curtains from white gauze. After finishing these tasks, my mom started preparing dinner. Since it was spring, the factory area was overrun with wild vegetables. She picked a lot of wild onions, stir-fried them with cured meat, and harvested plenty of tender shepherd's purse to make a salad with water-soaked fermented black beans and spicy millet peppers. She also cooked several shepherd's purse pancakes. A fragrant dinner was ready. The dinner had been ready for a while, but my 2 brothers hadn't come back yet. Over the phone, they said they were still draining water and would come home after finishing. Worried the food would get cold, I packed it in a lunchbox and went to find them at the reservoir. When I arrived, my eldest brother was shirtless, rolling up his trouser legs and pulling on a hose. I waved the lunchbox at him, and after swallowing his saliva, he blurted out, "I won't eat until I'm done today. You can eat or starve, I don't care." I muttered before going to find my second brother. He was idly swinging his legs, sitting by the reservoir, lost in thought as he watched the slowly rising water level. Seeing me, he scooted over and pulled me up next to him. We sat side by side, watching the water in the reservoir and the golden glow of the setting sun on our eldest brother's figure. After a while, I leaned on my second brother's lean shoulder, too sleepy to keep my eyes open. Eventually, my eldest brother finished up with the hose and came over, and the 3 of us sat by the reservoir eating dinner. The 2 brothers started bickering about how sharing a room meant neither could sleep well. The second brother complained about the eldest talking in his sleep, while the eldest grumbled about the second getting up too early and disturbing him. They were really noisy, but I was also truly grateful. In a past life, they had died without a trace, and we never got to say goodbye. No. Under the sunset, their arguing was a picture of peaceful times. I hoped these peaceful times would continue, but I was worried because, according to the trajectory of the past life, a nuclear war was set to break out tomorrow night. That evening, I watched the news, which was all about the upcoming 5th round of talks in the morning. The media and officials were clear about their stance on these negotiations, publicly expressing, "A lot of effort has been made, and there is great confidence in reaching an agreement." I put down my phone, tired of the confusing news reports. In a past life, it was our blind trust in these reports that led us to walk unguarded into death. The next morning, we closely followed the live broadcast of the 5th round of negotiations. Being in the deep mountains, the signal was poor, and the intermittent feed made the viewing quite nerve-wracking. The first half seemed promising, with the talks going smoothly. But the atmosphere changed drastically in the second half, leading to a complete breakdown. The representative from Country M tore off the diplomatic mask, forcefully proposing an absurd reconciliation plan that demanded concessions from us on everything from territory to trade agreements. Our diplomats refused to back down, and the tension was palpable, almost as if they might come to blows at any moment. In the end, the fifth round of talks failed. My brothers watched, filled with righteous indignation, one cursing, the other clenching his fists, as if they wished they could jump through the screen and fight. My parents and I were pale, exchanging glances. Our slight hope had burst like a bubble, as this round of negotiations was exactly like the one in our previous life. It seemed the nuclear war was indeed going to break out tonight. My father paced back and forth on the leaf-strewn ground outside the door, saying, "Shouldn't we make one more effort to alert the people outside, Dad? They won't believe us." I shook my head. "We tried warning our relatives and friends the other day, but it was no use." My mother agreed. "Yes, they'll just dismiss these warnings as rumors." But my father was adamant. If they could just listen a little, we could save many lives. In the end, my father decided to take one more risk. He dialed the National Security Bureau and solemnly reported the nuclear explosion that was expected to occur that evening. Unconvinced by the lack of response, he spent half the day searching online and posted several warning videos on social platforms. Unfortunately, those videos were immediately removed by the platform for inciting rumors. The call he made was taken seriously, but they just placated him with a few words to trust the authorities and then hung up. My father was utterly disappointed, along with us, who stood silently by his side. We all let out a deep sigh. When nothing happens, no matter how loudly you scream, they think it's just a case of crying wolf. We genuinely didn't have convincing evidence. We couldn't persuade anyone, except for our family who believed us unconditionally. After a while, my father recovered and asked my two brothers to check on the bomb shelter again. In a previous life, the nuclear missile trajectory posed no threat to Yunchuan County, but we couldn't be too sure. At 6 in the evening, our family entered the bomb shelter. We even forcibly brought along Grandpa, who was cooking at the time. Grandpa resisted all the way, but my father was persistent, and he had to come. Interestingly, his two dogs, very protective of him, followed us into the shelter. The shelter, built to wartime specifications, was very sturdy and secure. Originally a natural cave shaped like a gourd, narrow on the outside and deep within, it had been converted into a shelter. 2 reinforced doors were added during construction, one on the outside and another inner door, making it extremely secure. We settled in at the very back of the shelter, sitting on crates, tense and anxious. I kept my eyes on my watch. It was 18:57. Half an hour until the nuclear explosion. My mother looked pale, holding me close while pulling my two brothers closer to her side. My father, with a serious expression, sat on the edge, his eyes fixed on the door, unmoving. Only Grandpa kept muttering along the way, "Thinking of explosions, what nonsense. I've lived here for decades without even an earthquake." His two dogs sat beside him, barking occasionally in response to his voice. Time passed by second in the tense atmosphere. My father repeatedly reminded us, "Close your eyes, hold your breath, and lie face down on the ground." I stared at my watch, silently counting down. 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. In a past life, because we were so close to the blast, the ground shook violently, and the fierce winds hurled stones at the garage door. It was unstoppable. The intensity of the vibration was immense, lasting a long time like muffled thunder. I was terrified then, thinking that the next second, it would tear us apart. So this time, I started counting silently, and at 10 seconds, I tightly closed my eyes and covered my ears. Then, my two brothers threw themselves over me, shielding me with their bodies, pressed under them. My back was tense, my whole body trembling. I could feel they were trembling too. In that extreme tension, my mind lost all sense of time, and so, time ticked by second. The expected shakes and roars never came, and everything remained normal. Grandpa got restless and stood up, saying, "What explosion? There shouldn't be any. I need to go home and cook." It took several deep breaths before I mustered the courage to get up and open my eyes. I glanced at the time. It was already 19:35. 3 minutes had passed since the time of the supposed explosion. We forcibly held back Grandpa, insisting until after 8 o'clock. When we nervously opened the door of the bomb shelter, outside was pitch black, with only the sounds of unidentified insects, creating a seemingly tranquil atmosphere as if nothing had happened. We all were glued to our mobile phones, trying to find out the latest updates, but the signal was very weak, making it difficult to even open a browser. After what felt like an eternity, my older brother seemed to have found some news. He looked up, his face streaming with sweat. "The explosions have happened. There have been multiple blasts in the southern and central regions, and the extent of casualties is still unclear. The network stations there are down. It really happened," my dad said. His face grim. My heart raced as I looked around the dark surroundings, unsure if this place would remain a safe haven, but compared to other places, it was relatively safe. After standing motionless for a while, Grandpa called his 2 dogs and said he was going home. We tried to persuade him otherwise, but he was adamant. What's meant to happen will happen. Don't worry about me. I've lived long enough. Grandpa insisted on going home, worried about potential nuclear strikes in the following days. We stayed in the bomb shelter for several more days. Everyone was anxious. Even my usually cheerful eldest brother looked worried. He had thought we were overreacting, just taking a few days off school to have a trip to the countryside. Little did we expect it to come to this. We managed to access some news online. Nuclear alarms had been sounded in multiple areas of the southern and central regions of our country, and country had destroyed several ports and key military bases. The places where we once lived were now engulfed in conflict. After the nuclear explosion, our country launched a full-scale attack on country. Just like in past conflicts, allied nations joined the fray, some seizing the opportunity to provoke further or acting out of mutual dependency. The nuclear war we thought would never happen had just erupted. One day, an explosion nearby made us feel a slight tremor even inside the bomb shelter. We guessed it was no more than 50 or 60 kilometers away from us. Then, the network signals completely died out, and the radio only picked up static. It might have been due to the destruction of the transmission stations. By then, we were finally convinced that the conflict wouldn't reach us here. However, it was still unsafe outside, and we might have to stay here for a long time. Possibly until the complete cessation of hostilities. This could take months, or even a year or two. With many uncertainties in between, we had to be prepared for a prolonged struggle. However, our current food supplies wouldn't last that long. That evening, we held a family meeting to discuss our immediate priorities. Accommodation was already sorted, but we needed to construct a toilet and washing area. We had to hurry with planting and farming. If we couldn't develop sustainability, we would soon starve. Especially with 5 people, there were also concerns about safety and electricity. During these times of conflict, desperate people might seek refuge in the mountains, and in their desperation, robberies and murders could occur. Currently, we were using oil lamps for lighting. Some of the equipment is powered by previously stored portable batteries, so we need to set up the power generators quickly. My father adopts the contracting team model for meetings. Everyone discusses their issues, takes responsibility for their own area, and within 10 minutes, the work direction is set. My eldest brother is in charge of farming, while my second brother takes care of security and power supply. My father hasn't assigned me any tasks. He said, "There's no need for you, sister. Just help mom with the cooking." Eldest brother, "Don't worry about working." Little sister, "Just focus on having fun." Second brother, "Last time you helped with moving the logs, you cut your hand and bled quite a bit. It's better if you just stay at home with mom." Embarrassed, I looked at the scar on my palm that had already healed and declared my resolve. No, I want to help my brothers with their tasks. Although my 2 brothers often quarrel with each other, they are both very protective of me. I'm quite introverted. In high school, I was bullied over a trivial matter. I tried to endure it, but the bullying escalated. Over time, I became very depressed and even dropped out of school. Later, my eldest brother noticed something was wrong and confronted the bullies at school. One of them had some influence and managed to get my brother into trouble. Fortunately, my second brother was prepared and produced evidence that we were being bullied and were acting in self-defense, which finally resolved the issue. My brothers have always been so good to me, and I feel for them, so I wanted to lend a hand. In Yunchuan, there are many uncultivated lands with traces of past cultivation. My eldest brother took some measuring tools and planned the layout, then started weeding and plowing. He plans to plant sweet potatoes, and corn since they are easy to manage and can serve as both food and vegetables. Additionally, he planned to plant various seasonal vegetables. With these and some wild vegetables we already have, our meals are well taken care of. Farming is my eldest brother's comfort zone. Being a graduate student in agriculture, he has been working with the land since his freshman year. He knows exactly what to do at each step. However, this kind of work can't be rushed. It's all manual labor. My eldest brother used to work out daily. Here, his farm work goes smoothly, and under the sunlight, his well-defined muscles and bulging veins showcase his vigor and strength. Whenever I hand him tools or bring him water, I always think that if he had shown off his physique earlier, he might have already had a wife. When I mentioned this, he seriously told me that many people are interested in him, but he isn't considering these matters right now. My second brother seems more relaxed, wandering around with his tools like an electrician, occasionally installing something or hammering away, making security measures seem like a game. There are 2 main entrances to the Yunchuan machinery factory, the main gate and a side path. My second brother repaired the gate and installed electric fences and surveillance at both places. These measures won't stop a large-scale invasion, but they are sufficient to deter petty intruders. Moreover, he set up several solar panels and a small wind turbine he brought with him, solving our lighting, bathing, and communication issues. He also found some spare parts in an abandoned warehouse and crafted a simple rotary tiller, seed spreader, and irrigation system. With these machines, my eldest brother is even more efficient, quickly planting the first batch of crops to ensure their growth. He also built simple greenhouses. Later, we also got some chicks and ducklings from Grandpa, built chicken coops and duck pens, and dug a small pond for the ducks. We also stocked the pond with fish from the river. Ready to be caught whenever we fancy, we truly began living an idyllic rural life. As dawn breaks, we rise to work, and as dusk falls, we rest. Life is simple, comfortable, and content. By the end of April, the radio finally started picking up faint signals. However, the broadcasts were disappointing, all about the war. It seemed most places had fallen. We tried contacting friends and relatives, but phone calls couldn't go through, and the internet was unreachable. We assumed that communication towers would be rebuilt eventually, but likely not, prioritizing remote areas like ours. Being able to catch even fragmented news from the outside world through the radio felt like a stroke of luck. Grandpa visited our farmhouse daily, initially offering guidance as the elder, but later he became somewhat sentimental, remarking that we were quite proficient at farming. He asked, "Do you really plan to stay here permanently?" "Of course not." My dad shook his head. "We'll return as soon as it's safe outside. It's hard to know what it's like out there now." He squinted. "My fishing buddy hasn't shown up for a long time." My dad offered, "Do you need anything? We've got everything here. I can bring you some oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar." Grandpa looked at him gratefully. "I insist on paying, though." "All right, just keep track of it then," my dad replied. My brother and I chuckled on the side, thinking that money might not be so easy to spend these days. Indeed, Grandpa's friend hadn't visited. If any strangers approached, our installed surveillance would alert us promptly, but recently, it had been eerily quiet, truly not a soul around. Worried about potential nuclear dust, we tested the water with prepared strips before use each day. Luckily, that concern was unnecessary. Surrounded by high mountains, no contamination had drifted our way. That evening, after finishing our chores, we sat in the courtyard enjoying the cooler air. Summer brought an abundance of mosquitoes, so Mom lit some mugwort for smoke and served us a watermelon that had been chilled in the storage pond. The watermelon was an unexpected delight. Earlier today, my elder brother stumbled upon a forgotten melon patch near the slope. Not many, but all ripe and plump. They were juicy, sweet, and refreshing, though the only downside was too many seeds, which were a bit of a nuisance. My parents fiddled with the radio, trying to catch the latest news of the war, but the static was too intense to make anything out. Bored, my two brothers and I watched a movie on a laptop. We shared similar tastes in movies, zombie, mystery, and horror genres, so when the sound turned up, our parents disapprovingly glanced at us and took the radio inside. Today's film was aptly about survivors navigating the ruins of a post-apocalyptic world. Leaning against my elder brother and resting my feet on the other, I whispered, "Does this count as the apocalypse for us too? If we go back, do I still have to go to school?" The thought of school made me reflexively withdraw. It was after leaving school that the shadows began to fade from my heart. The wilderness here felt like a paradise, a haven from a frightening world. My elder brother seriously said, "If you don't want to go to school, you don't have to. I can take care of you." My other brother glanced at him. He only knows farming. "Will you just dig potatoes every day? Come with me to my school. I'll rent a place, and you can just hang out in parks and play games." I shook my head, feeling a bit spoiled by their indulgence. Maybe I should think about what I can do for them. I can't keep avoiding reality, avoiding people forever. Our vegetable garden is thriving, and a daily walk through it provides enough fresh picks for our meals. The fish in the pond have grown plump, perfect for making delicious dishes like sauerkraut fish and boiled fish. We can't even finish the eggs collected daily from the chicken and duck coops, so we preserve them by pickling. My mom even tried building a makeshift oven out of clay and bricks, successfully baking bread that my eldest brother loves. He can devour 4 in one sitting. Our daily routine, healthy diet, and proper labor have brought positive changes to our physical health. My dad used to suffer from mild hypertension, but his dizziness has now vanished. My mom, who frequently had migraines, hasn't had one since using a remedy Grandpa gave her. Previously, I would stay indoors, pale as a ghost from lack of sunlight, but now my cheeks are rosy and gleaming from regular sun exposure. My brothers, too, have become healthier through constant physical work. Even the thinner second brother has gained some muscle. We've grown to love this secluded life. Away from the chaos and annoyances of the city, as the world seems to be ending, we've found our own paradise. By mid-July, we started receiving clear radio signals and even the internet began to come back. Just like before, conflicts are erupting everywhere. The area near our home has become a complete mess. Fortunately, things are calmer near Yunchuan, with only one conflict occurring 50 kilometers away, all within controllable limits. Our remote location from the county town enhances our safety. We've managed to contact some relatives and friends online. However, the conversations are filled with tears and suppressed sorrow. Just like in the past, many have died, many are injured and in critical condition. Those lucky enough are hiding in safe bases, uncertain of when it will end. After every phone call, my dad laments, if only they had listened a bit earlier, they wouldn't be in such a dire situation. We invited some relatives who we're close to, but they couldn't make it because checkpoints everywhere are locked down, making travel nearly impossible. It's understandable, as the government troops are also trying to ensure everyone's safety, and there are many uncontrollable risks on the roads. We later heard that the government plans to build survival bases in remote mountain areas. Hearing this, our family fell silent. On one hand, it seems inevitable, on the other. We worry that the Yunchuan machinery factory might be targeted. If a large number of people pour in, chaos will ensue due to the long-term lack of supplies, leading to desperation, theft, violence, and looting could become prevalent. In times of survival, the darkest aspects of human nature can fully emerge. After a long silence, my dad gestured dismissively, let's cross that bridge when we come to it. He has always been a man of broad mind and stout body, rarely worrying about things that haven't happened yet, which keeps his spirits high. My two brothers, one always joking and the other quietly handling big issues, don't wear their worries on their faces. The ones in our family who are more aware of potential dangers are my mom and me. Our worries soon materialized. One day in August, before we had even gotten out of bed, the alarm on our surveillance system started beeping. My second brother quickly got up to check. After seeing the screen, he gasped, there are two people outside at the electric fence. I leaned over to look. Indeed, there were two middle-aged men slowly approaching, the leader looking familiar. After staring for a few seconds, I suddenly realized, second brother, we've seen this man before. He's the police officer who questioned us at the highway checkpoint. Is that so? My brother squinted, grabbed his shirt from the chair, and put it on. I'll go over and check out the situation first. You all just stay at home and don't go anywhere. Worried that my second brother might be at a disadvantage alone, I quickly went to wake up my eldest brother and father. They both followed swiftly. My mother and I were also restless at home, constantly feeling like something big was about to happen. Later, I climbed to the rooftop of this tube-shaped building, took out a telescope, and looked towards the place. The electric fence at the gate was intact, and there was no one there anymore. After watching for a while, I noticed that my father and the others were already on their way back, about to reach the building. I ran downstairs in haste, panting as I asked, what happened? I could clearly sense that something serious had occurred from the odd expressions on the faces of the three of them. My father sighed deeply. That police officer had actually been suspicious of us for a while and knew we went to the Yunchuan machinery factory. What do you mean? I was utterly speechless. We didn't break any laws, it's not that. My second brother looked at us. He came to us today to inform us about something. From tomorrow, they will start sending refugees here, and we need to accommodate them. My mother muttered, won't that create chaos? Can't we just say we don't have enough resources here to support that many people? My eldest brother shook his head. They already checked with satellite maps before deciding to send them here, so it's more of a notification, not a negotiation, my father added. I also mentioned that we don't have enough resources, but they said the people coming are all able-bodied workers. After much discussion, they agreed to try and provide whatever resources we really need. After some thought, we called Grandpa over and held a meeting together. Everyone agreed that now that it had come to this, we had to help our fellow countrymen. But we needed to consider how to go about it. We can currently only sustain ourselves. If dozens or even hundreds more come, survival would become a problem. Grandpa was quite pleased. He said that the place had been deserted for 20 years, and now it was getting lively. He gestured expansively. Isn't this just like when we first came here? We had nothing back then either. This reminded my father, who suddenly exclaimed, we can totally use the model from decades ago to manage this. We were all confused, but he confidently dismissed us to go to sleep with peace of mind. My mother nodded vigorously, planning to start preparations early the next morning, saying she was actually looking forward to having some company to chat with. Before going to sleep, I heard my eldest brother humming a song in the shower next door, clearly in a good mood. Soon after, my second brother knocked on my door, peeking in to ask, is my charger in your room? After I handed it to him, he smiled, wished me good night, and urged me to sleep early. I couldn't help but blurt out, aren't you guys worried? So many people are coming. Why worry? Compared to them, who have been fleeing for so long and are arriving in an unfamiliar environment, they are the ones who should be more anxious, my second brother replied, turning his head so the moonlight fell on his prominent nose, his face calm and composed. Well, it seems I'm the only one in the family who's anxious, but I have social anxiety. I'm really scared of facing a crowd of people, especially after a war, and surely There will be many conflicts, just like when I was bullied in school. Noticing my mood, my second brother reached out and pinched my cheek. Just stick with your brother tomorrow. Will it be okay? Yes, I promise. The next morning at 10, the first batch of post-war refugees arrived. About 20 people, men and women of various ages, all looking worn and weary, their eyes filled with despair and confusion. This situation is just like when we initially fled for safety. Living in constant fear of life and death can cloud anyone's mind, not to mention the pain of losing loved ones, which would weigh heavily on anyone. My parents warmly welcomed everyone, leading them straight into an abandoned factory. Are we really settling everyone here? Not just those people, even I was confused. The factory walls were riddled with cracks and peeling paint, broken machinery and debris littered the floor, making the place look eerie and terrifying. Filled with the smell of dust and metallic odors, which was quite unpleasant, the place was in complete disarray, utterly unsuitable for living. The expressions on people's faces grew increasingly grim, shifting from confusion to doubt and slight anger. They wanted to live, but not in such a demeaning way. Like dogs, my dad, cheerful and outgoing, seemed completely oblivious to everyone's mood. Let's clean up this place this morning. We need an open space. The mood soured even further. With a couple of men even standing up, I assumed they wanted to fight or scramble for resources. Frightened, I instinctively closed my eyes and hid behind my older brother. Still, I could hear my dad's enthusiastic voice. We don't need to clean up a big area. Just this part. We need a space to mass-produce furniture. Surely no one wants to sleep on the floor tonight. Furniture making. Everyone was taken aback. Yes, let's clean up first. Later, we'll select some people to make furniture, while the rest follow me to clean the rooms in the apartment building. We aim to move into a new home by tonight. Oh, all right. What about tools? Everyone responded, their spirits lifting. They quickly began cleaning, with my two brothers and dad helping out. My mom and I weren't idle either. Following the police's list, we divided them into 6 dormitories, 5 rooms with bunk beds for 4, and 1 for couples, with many hands making light work. They cleared out over 100 square meters by 10 p.m. Then, my dad inquired and kept 8 skilled individuals to make furniture, while my 2 brothers took 11 people to clean rooms. Mom also took 3 women to start a fire for cooking. I was initially very nervous. But seeing everyone working so efficiently and energetically, I felt oddly inspired. I wasn't so scared anymore. After all, they were also unfortunate souls, our fellow sufferers. Cooking for many wasn't easy. Our cooking utensils were clearly too small. With no other choice, we scavenged in an abandoned house and found 2 old large iron pots, likely used for cooking pig feed before, but in critical times. It didn't matter. After cleaning them, my mom cooked a large pot of sweet potato rice. One of the women took charge of the fire, another handled the vegetables, and the third skillfully stir-fried, all adept in their movements. In no time, 3 large pots of food were ready: stir-fried green peppers and potatoes, braised chicken, and a wild vegetable and duck egg soup. Honestly, the amount of food wasn't much. Considering there were about 20 or 30 people, each person could only get a spoonful of food. But everyone was excited, having not had a hot meal in a long time. A young boy, only in his teens, started crying as he ate. He said, "Before my mom died, she always wanted to drink some hot soup, but unfortunately, she never did." Hearing this, I felt really sad. I remembered the despair and sorrow from the past life when I received the news of my brother and parents' deaths, which I often recall. With that in mind, I scooped some egg from my bowl into his, whispering, "It's okay. You'll have soup every day from now on." I was afraid he might thank me or say something else, so I quickly took my bowl and sat elsewhere. I just didn't want to interact. By evening that day, they had cleared 6 rooms, and the makeshift beds and small tables were nearly complete. There wasn't enough cotton padding. When my family first arrived, we only brought a minimal amount, just enough for ourselves. Thus, only 1 pregnant woman received a quilt. The others had to make do with straw padding temporarily, however. In the morning, while cleaning the factory, we found several large boxes of brand new gauze masks. Some of the women took them apart and managed to patch together some simple bed sheets. Fortunately, the season isn't too cold. By layering a few clothes at night, one could manage to sleep. They didn't mind at all, saying it was much better than they had expected. Having food, drink, and a place to stay, and not having to worry about dying outside, was a relief for the next several days. We were constantly busy, repairing doors and windows, fixing the toilets, farming, and fishing. One particularly capable uncle even set traps in the wilderness, catching a few wild chickens and rabbits, which we then began to raise. My mom, along with a group of women, found plenty of wild sweet potatoes, yams, and potatoes on the nearby barren hill, dug them up, and brought them back, providing us meals for several days. With 20 to 30 people to feed, resources were tight. But everyone had an unspoken agreement: the best food was reserved first for the elderly, women, and children, and there was no fighting over it. Grandpa, kind-hearted as he is, came almost every day, bringing vegetables and fruit from his own garden, sometimes even chickens and a basket of eggs. Sometimes he'd join us for the communal meals and help out with work. Saying it made him happy to see everyone, and it reminded him of his arrival here decades ago, he said. Yunchuan machinery plant has finally come back to life. His eyes reddened as he spoke, probably remembering relatives and colleagues who had left years ago. We were indeed living with a spirited and fiery determination. My dad, as the manager, had expectations for everyone. He established rules. Labor was divided by gender, work points were calculated based on labor, and then goods like food, quilts, clothing, and daily necessities were distributed according to those points. In other words, if you were lazy and shirked work, you wouldn't eat. The community was vigilant, and no lazy or useless person could escape notice. I was included in this too, although my older brothers often helped with my tasks, so I wasn't much more tired than usual. Under principles of fairness, transparency, and justice, these people were extremely grateful to our family and truly trusted us, one burly man confessed. When I first came here, I thought if I wasn't treated well, I'd have to resort to violence. But now I see that you are sincerely good-hearted without hidden motives. My dad, ever casual, waved his hand. No need for that. We all just want to survive. Unity is our only way. At that moment, I gained a new understanding of my dad. Before, I always thought he was a bit naive, a simple good guy, not as sharp as my older brothers. Now, I realized his honesty was his greatest strength. By being open and sincere, he avoided many problems. No wonder he'd been a successful contractor for so many years, with loyal and devoted workers, none of whom ever betrayed or deserted him. His character, not inclined towards making much money but rich in integrity and trust, ensured he would never live with guilt. On the 10th day, the police brought in 10 more people. This time they didn't come empty-handed but brought much-needed supplies: cotton padding, fabric, diesel, salt, clothes, hygiene products, and grains. The arrival of new supplies was welcome, but the arrival of new members meant another round of busyness. This time, however, our family didn't need to do everything ourselves. Those who were accustomed to life here warmly guided the newcomers, helping them integrate quickly. Almost every couple of weeks, refugees would arrive. Sometimes there were 5 or 6, other times there were more than a dozen. They appeared disheveled and worn, some even bearing injuries. Those with injuries were actually quite troublesome because they couldn't handle heavy labor and were essentially consuming resources. However, we tried our best to utilize their skills. For instance, one of them was a doctor, so after his arrival, he provided a lot of medical assistance and even helped deliver a baby for a woman in labor. Another was skilled in handicrafts. Although he couldn't work outside due to a leg injury, he kept busy in the yard making baskets, fences, and brooms. As my dad used to say, we don't entertain idlers here. If you want to eat, you have to work. Freed from the pursuit of vain ambitions, our long-term involvement in a spiritually draining and competitive society came to an end, and we found tranquility instead. We lived a truly happy life reminiscent of the 1980s. There were no disparities in wealth, no cutthroat competition. We simply worked from sunrise to sunset. We encouraged each other during busy times and enjoyed the flowers and the moon during leisure, living carefree days. This lifestyle was the only pleasant surprise in these chaotic times. I'm still quite introverted now, preferring not to interact much with these people, wanting only to be with my brothers. Seeing that I wasn't very enthusiastic, they didn't force me, in a way. Out of respect for my father, they were quite protective of me. Over time, I came to see them as a lovable group of people. Sometimes I would hide behind the crowd, listening to their jokes, smiling slightly, feeling as though I was part of them. This state continued until the end of the year, when our population had grown to over 600. We made use of every viable building, besides 2 cylinder blocks. We renovated 2 dormitory buildings and refurbished the basketball court and the canteen. My dad couldn't manage so many people by himself anymore. He stepped back to only oversee and advise, acting as a patriarch. He delegated responsibilities. Some took care of infrastructure, some handled security, some managed livestock, some took charge of cultivation, and some oversaw the kitchen. It's worth mentioning that those in charge of security were strong young men with excellent enforcement capabilities. Once, they dealt harshly with a thug who tried to storm into our base. It's safe to say that apart from birds and bugs, no other creatures could intrude into our base and disrupt our lives. I also took on some responsibilities. Because of my strong memory and attention to detail, I was in charge of managing supplies, but every time we took inventory, many eager people came to help. This time, I felt warmth not only from my brothers but from many others as well. At this moment, I finally believed that love can both demand and give, and that giving always brings rewards. Heaven does not disappoint the sincere. One day, among the refugees, there was a familiar face. It was a girl who had bullied me in the past and was the main reason behind my depression and dropping out of school. She was emaciated, with messy, tangled blonde hair and a fearful look in her eyes. Clearly, she had suffered a lot in recent months. Seeing me, she was exceptionally frightened, continuously holding a stone in her hand, warning me not to come any closer. I approached her. Looking down from above, "I'm just here to tell you that you need to work, otherwise, you have no right to live here." "Why should I?" She became angry. "The country won't just watch us die." I laughed. "There is no such thing as unearned good or evil. You have to pay a price for what you receive. Don't speak of high ideals until you've mustered enough courage." She looked at me nervously. "You want revenge, don't you?" I glanced at her with pity. "Do I need to? Look at what you've already become." She was stunned, then crouched in place for who knows how long before finally struggling to her feet and picking up her tools. I never bothered with her again. After a long time on alert, the panic in her eyes finally faded. By March of the following year, the news online was becoming increasingly pessimistic. The front lines kept being pushed back, shifting across many places. However, after experiencing the consequences of massacres, both sides reached a tacit agreement and lethal weapons were completely banned. Now, it was more about a prolonged daily attrition, with no end in sight. For 2 consecutive months, the middle-aged policeman who frequently brought refugees and supplies had not shown up. One day, we learned from his colleague that he had been hit by a stray bullet while escorting supplies out of town. He had been killed. We all fell silent upon hearing the news. Our relationship with this middle-aged policeman had always been complex. We feared him, yet we had to accept his arrangements. Over time, he had brought many refugees to us, and had grimly forced supplies upon us as well. We often found him annoying, as he brought us so many troubles. Now that he was dead, all we knew was that his surname was Zhang. He was about 50 years old, and he had a 15-year-old daughter. He died on the road and would no longer bother us. My usually cheerful father also lost his smile that day. He sighed. "I regret it a little. I should have invited old Jing for a drink. I even had 2 bottles of good wine in the air raid shelter." Indeed, we had never even invited him for a meal, nor offered him a drink of water, let alone wine. That evening, I curled up on the bed in my older brother's bedroom watching a movie. The 3 of us stared at the computer screen, wordlessly heavy-hearted. I couldn't even make out what was on the screen. Then, tears inexplicably began to flow, falling on my older brother's back. He shuddered as if stunned, then turned his head and said to us, "I don't want to stay here anymore." "What?" I looked at him with reddened eyes. "This place probably doesn't need me anymore, but there are people out there who need help. Many places are calling for volunteers, for young people with knowledge and skills." My second brother gripped my hand tightly and looked up. "I feel the same way. What do you think, little sister?" I stared at them, somewhat disbelieving what I heard, yet feeling that it was inevitable. In my heart, I wanted to say that I needed them, that I wanted them to stay alive and by my side. I didn't care about those outside, but the words just wouldn't come out, so I bit my lip and remained silent. Later, under their gaze, I lowered my eyes. "Okay, just come back early." At the end of March, my older brothers left the base. My parents and I stood at the factory gate. Behind us were our brethren from the base. We waved at the car until it disappeared from sight. Though our eyes were red, none of us cried. We believed we would meet again. When that time comes, it surely won't be like today. We will walk out of here openly, on a land no longer scarred by war.